Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on your favorite Little's Law YouTube channel. So today we are in the third session or the third episode. So previously, if you remember, we have stopped at the very last step where I have entered Control Shift P and I've chosen the Python select interpreter and I have chosen my locust scripts python.exe. So that was the last step that I have performed. And in fact, in the very first two episodes, we saw about what is performance testing and what locust is going to bring the change, what locust is going to change. And in the second chapter, we saw about how to set up the Python, um, the locust, and the IDE setup along with the required extensions. And today we are in the third episode where you're going to execute, where you're going to write your very first Hello World test program, and also you're going to test your code. You're going to test your first locust code. So this is going to be very, very interesting and exciting because we're going to write our very first locust test. So in VS Code, so I'm in VS Code now, um, and you can either click on this new file or you can go and click on Control N. So let me go with this Control N. I'm going to create a new file, or I can even let me just do this one, Control N. Yep, so Control N, or else I can do a new file here, or I'm going to create a new file inside my locust environment, so something like this, and I'm going to give this file name as locust file.py. Click on enter. Let me close this. I don't want this one. So the name locust file.py is important because locust looks for the specific file name by default. And now let me explain where we are, what we're going to build, because we're going to create a simple load test that hits a test website, and I'll be using http bin.org, which is a free service designed for testing HTTP requests. And our test will simulate users visiting a web page. So let me type out the code for you and I'll explain each part as we go. So starting from the very first line, so from locust, see, if you have installed this Python and this pylance, it will help you with the code part again. And then locust and import. I'm going to import HTTP user. So just understand what I'm doing it, that's it. And then the task between, right? I'll explain you what are they. And then I'm going to write a class which has hello world user space bracket HTTP user. We're going to call that HTTP user, which you have declared in the first line, and a colon to end that, and then the wait time. So just remember, this is the think time that we do in the tools like JMeter or NeoLoad or Load Runner, and between 1 to 3. And then at task, I'm going to define a hello underscore world of self colon self dot client dot get of, this is going to be a get request, right? So let me explain you what did I do. I'll do a breakdown line by line. So going to the first line from locust, let me close this one. Going to the first line from locust. So I'm importing three things from locust: the HTTP user, which is the base class of our simulated users, and task. If you see here, the second one is a decorator that marks the methods as tasks that the users will perform, and then the between help us define wait times between the tasks, the think time basically. And then we have the class. So we are creating a class called hello world user that inherits from the HTTP user. And this class represents the behavior of our simulated users. And then in the third line, the wait time between line 1 to 3. So that tells Locust that after each task, the users should wait between 1 and 3 seconds before performing another task. Simply it's think time. Just remember, that's it. It's not too difficult to understand. So this simulates a realistic user behavior. Real users don't just hammer your server continuously, and this has been discussed lots and lots of times. So if you're someone who has performance testing knowledge, you don't need to you think much about this wait time. Yes, you're going to use it to emulate realistic user behavior. And then the task, the at task decorator marks this method as something our users will do. So you can have multiple tasks in a class, and Locust will randomly choose between them. And then in lines 7 and 8, the hello world method is our actual task, and it uses self.client.getOff to make a HTTP request to the get endpoint. That's it. This is a complete working Locust test. It's very simple, right? Now you might be wondering, where is the host? Where are we actually sending these requests? It's a great question. I'll specify that when we run the test. And save your file. Let me just quickly save this in case if I find it's not saved. So I've saved it. The file name is here, and make sure it's named exactly as locust file.py. And now we are going to run our first test. And now for the moment of truth, let's run our test and go back to your terminal. So to go back to your terminal, click on these three lines, go to this terminal and click on new terminal. You'll get a new terminal, and make sure you are on the right folder. So let me do a click ls, and just remember I'm inside my locust env. So I'll have to, in case if you are running the command, it will fail because you're not with the actual file. So what you have to do is you do ls, you'll find where you are, and then do a cd locust. So now if you do ls, you can see the file, the locust file.py, and now you can run the command, that is locust -f file name and locust file.py. Yes, minus host, the host which is the end URL, right? So the one which you wanted to test, http bin.org, and I'm clicking on enter. So as I told you, the f minus flag tells Locust which file to use, and minus host specifies the target server. And after I press enter, you should be able to see some output ending with the URL something like this, the HTTP localhost, and you should see the localhost web interface when you click on it. Yep, now you can see this. You should be able to see this user locust web interface, and it's clean and modern. So you'll see a form asking for two things. One is the number of users, and then the ramp up. So here, this is how many users, how many concurrent users you want to simulate. So let's start a small number, which is like 10, and then the ramp up period, which is the spawn rate. So this is how many users per second should be added. So if I enter it as 2, this means Locust will start 2 users per second until it reaches 10 users. And if I click on start swarming, I can click on start. So if you see the host name, you can even change it here. And we have a lot of advanced options, which we'll discuss later. For now, I'm going to click on start, and you'll be taken to a dashboard, a very, very colorful dashboard that you can ever see in any performance testing tool. So here you can see the RPS, the requests per second. So how many requests your test is generating, and you should see this number stabilize around 3 to 7 requests per second with our current setup. And then we have the response times, where you will see the chart showing response times over time, the different percentile, the 50th, 95th, and 99th, help you understand the distribution of different response times. And then the number of users, that should show 10 users, right? On the top, if you see, we have got 10 users. The status is running, which shows 10 simulator concurrent users, and then the statistics table that shows the detailed metrics for each endpoint, the total requests, the failures, the median response time, and various percentiles. And now if you click on the charts, you will be able to see the beautiful real time graphs of your test metrics. Watch those line moves in a real time, and this is your load test running live. As I told you in the very first video, that we can see all of these in real time. Just imagine how beautiful they are. I promise I've never seen such an interactive results section in any of the testing. And then the failures, the exceptions, the current ratio, the download data, logs, locust load, much more to watch. So please stay tuned, guys. And again, let us run the test for a minute, so you can see the materialize metrics getting stabilized. So it's very cool, right? So when you're ready, click the stop button in the top right corner to stop the test. Congratulations, you have just run your first load test with me, with Locust and with me. So let's quickly understand what has just happened, right? When you started the test, Locust created 10 instances of your hello world user class, and each instance represented one simulated user, and each of these users is running independently, executing the tasks you defined. And in our case, that's the hello world task, which makes the get request to /get. So after each request, each users wait between 1 and 10 seconds. Remember, wait time is equal to between 1 and 3, and then they make another request. So this continues in a loop until you stop your test. So the web interface collects all the metrics from these requests, response times, success rates, failures, and displays them in real time. And now you might notice that with 10 users and a wait time of 1 to 3 seconds, you can generate somewhere around 3 to 7 requests per second. And that's because on average, each user waits between like 2 seconds between each request. So 10 users divided by 2 seconds equals about 5 users or 5 requests per second. So some of the common issues that you might need to troubleshoot, say for example, if you find that command locust not found, this means that locust is not either installed or your virtual environment is not activated. So make sure you see the locust environment. So I'm talking about here. So make sure you see the locust environment at the start of your command prompt. If not, activate it again using the commands that we covered earlier. And in case if you find issues like no module named locust, so this means Python cannot find your locust. So again, make sure your virtual environment is activated and try running pip install locust again. In case if you're getting issues in with port 8089, which is already in use, which means either another locust instance is running or another program is using that port. So you can either stop the other program or tell locust to use a different port. And if you get connection errors or timeouts, make sure you have an internet connection and that the URL, host URL is correct. Also, some corporate networks might block certain sites or ports, so make sure you're fixing it. And then in case of any Python version errors, so if you're seeing weird syntax errors or import errors, double check your Python version with Python ---- version and make sure it is 3.7 or higher. So before we wrap up, let's do a quick experiment to see the power of what you just learned. So stop your test. I think by this time you might have started your test. So now let's modify our locust file to add another task. So I'm in my locust.py. I'm going to have the same lines from locust http user task between, and then the class hello world user, and then the wait time. And here, if you see the add task, I'm adding 3. And then the command, I'm going to define the hello world self.client get, and I'm going to add another task. So let me add here task of 1, and defining view underscore headers of self. I'll explain you what it is, don't worry. And I'm adding self.client dot get of headers, right? So in the previous one it was get, and now it is headers. So if you notice what I did, let me just quickly bring it down. If you notice what I did, I added a number in parentheses, right, after task. What does it mean? So the task of 3 means this task will be executed 3 times more often than the task of 1. So this is called task waiting. Just remember about this workload modeling. Yes, something exactly same like this. Let me quickly save this file. Yep. So now in your terminal, press Ctrl C because this test is still running. So press Ctrl C, and to stop the previous locust instance if it is still running, and I have to start it again. So let me run this again now. So now if I go back to the web interface, so let's go back to our web interface, refresh the page and start the new user with 10 users again, and let me start it. So now if you look at the statistics table, you should see 2 endpoints, right? The first one, the get, and then the headers, right? Notice how the get receives the request roughly 3 times as requests than headers, right? So 3 times more than this. So if it is 10, it is 40, which is like the difference is 30 right now. So that's the task waiting in action. If you remember, we have like different scripts and we used to distribute the load, right? Exactly the same thing. And this is incredibly useful for simulating realistic user behavior. So in real applications, some pages or actions are more popular than others. In those cases, you're going to add in the task. And One more useful thing before we finish, you can save your test results. So while a test is running or after it completes, click the download data tab in the web interface, and you will see options to download the statistics of all your metrics in the CSV format, um, and the failure. So you can details about any failed request and exceptions, any exceptions that occur. So you can get all those. In fact, you can run the Locust in a headless mode without the web interface, and you can save the results automatically. Let me show you how to do that quickly. I'll go back here, click C and stop the test. Let me even close this. Okay, let it run. We can run it later. So the command for that is locust minus F locust file.py minus minus host equals, that's going to be the same URL, and I'm going to add users. So users is equal, so users space 10 minus minus span minus rate space 2 minus minus run minus time space 1 minute minus minus headless minus minus html report.html. So this will actually run for 1 minute and it automatically generates a HTML report. You don't need to go back to the web interface and watch it instead. This will run your test in headless mode and it will save the results automatically. So that is the power of this command. So finally, I believe this would have been a wonderful journey for you. And let's recap what we accomplished today. So you have installed, in the previous episode, you have installed Python and you have set up a virtual environment, a best practice for all Python projects. And then you installed a Locust using pip and verified the installation. You have even set up your Visual Studio Code as a development environment. And most importantly, you wrote your first Locust test, a complete working load test that simulates multiple users hitting a web service. You ran that test, you saw the real-time metrics and even experimented with task weighting, right? The task of 3 and task of 1. So you should really feel proud. You have taken a huge step into the world of performance testing. And now here is what coming in episode 4. The next episode, you're going to understand the Locust architecture, the master worker model, and how load generation really works. So we're going to dive deep into how Locust actually works under the hood and how does it simulate thousands or even millions of users, and what's this master worker model everyone talks about, and how does distributed load generation work. So by understanding this architecture, it will help you to write better tests, troubleshoot issues more effectively, and scale your tests to handle massive loads. Plus, I'll show you some really cool tricks that are not in the documentation or anywhere you find in the terms of the Locust. So let's make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episodes. If you find this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and it's really helpful the channel grow, and let's make you want more content like this. And if you have any questions about today's setup, drop them in the comments below. I read every comment and I'm here to help. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in episode 4. Until then, happy testing. Take care and bye-bye.